We have quite a significant transit going down right now. In fact, it's so significant that it hasn't happened since 1875, and that is Neptune meeting with Mercury at the Aries point. Neptune today is at 0 degrees Aries, and Mercury's at 1 degrees, but they both share the same Sabian symbol, and that is a woman has risen out of the sea. A seal is embracing her. And I instantly just started getting so many downloads in relation to this, and that's absolutely par for the course with this kind of energy. It will activate that part of your consciousness that can enter into that dream time space, that can ride the hedge into that liminal space of possibility and see a different view of what is possible. And actually, that's really being encouraged at this time with this energy. Now, to me, the woman rising out of the sea is symbolic of Venus. And currently, we still have Venus in Pisces at 25 degrees. And that's an interesting Sabian symbol because it's the purging of the priesthood. And it's about ridding ourselves of all negative thought. And this is really essential at this time because we're coming into a certain power that we haven't held up until now. In fact, in this lifetime, we haven't risen to this kind of power. And it's a power that we are rising in conscious awareness within ourselves. And it's sort of laying out the road before us as we travel forward here. But it does have a bit of that Skywalker energy. It's something we're dreaming into being. And there's so much going on at this time that's getting activated with the astrology. So I want to dive into that a little bit to show you how I'm arriving at my connection points here. Now, that Sabian symbol of the woman has risen out of the sea and the seal is embracing her is all about becoming the truest essence of your soul's incarnation. It's all about aligning with your North Star, with your purpose. And all of this is tying into those initiatory gateways we'll be facing with the next 2 full moons. Full moon coming up in Scorpio will be quite significant. And there's an epiphany coming the day after that full moon in Scorpio, which goes down on May 12th. But on May 13th is when we really arrive at a point of epiphany. I got this coming in quite strongly. On that day, there's something that comes through where it's like a star guiding the Magi to the newborn king. It's got that sort of 3 kings association, but there's one whose destiny has been sealed, just as another's fate has also been sealed. And there's something playing out in that energy there. Of course, Epiphany is connected to the story of the 3 kings following the star that led them to Bethlehem. And the Epiphany normally takes place 12 days after Christmas, okay? So there could be something that ties back to that time of year too. Earlier this year, 13 days after Christmas during Capricorn season, okay? There is something that could tie into that time that is connected with this epiphany that you'll have on the 13th. But it's interesting because as I was diving into that energy of the purging of the priesthood, it made me think of the high priestess, which can be associated with all the water signs. We've been diving in quite a bit to the waterway and how this is the way forward. And certainly this is the case, but before we can really come into the full expansion of this transformational process we're all going through, this state of becoming. It's a shape-shifting process we're going through, a bit of that hunt energy leading up to the Sagittarian full moon on the 11th, which is also a real important time. At that time, Jupiter will be moving out of Gemini. It'll be moving into Cancer, where it is exalted. And so this is really about coming back home to oneself, getting back to one's origin story so it can be dreamed into being through the activation of that muse energy, which is fueling us with the inspiration of Awen. And all of this is starting to roll out. But before we can get to that point of empowerment, and also there's an important transit going on with Mercury conjunct Venus at that time. Okay, so there's a lot that's going to be coming in here, communicating, but not through the usual means. And this is what you need to be prepared for. The means of expansion for the current Aries point joining of Neptune and Mercury is Cancer, 7 degrees. So it is really tying back into what will come to fruition with that Sagittarius full moon on June 11th, which lines up right with our gateways of initiation that we've been talking about here on the channel. But it's also a time when very slowly, gradually, we're going to be kind of coming out of a haze and starting to move into that expansion, but through the imagination of just what could be possible for us. And that's what that Cancer's 7 degrees pathway is all about. Okay, it is the pathway that is the airway, you could say, or the vulture's path. Okay, that came through with the vision I had in real life. In real life, not in dream time, where I saw the 5 vultures circling. Okay, the vulture's path connected to Loki, kenning for Loki, the airway. This is where the messages are coming in, and it's going to come through the intangible. We'll notice a lot of information coming through what seem like otherworldly encounters, but it may be things that are happening, in our day-to-day reality, much like I had that experience with Ted, where he saw the 5 vultures, circling, and it was like the tarot reading coming to life before my eyes. It's when those lines between what's the dream and what is reality are going to be blurred a bit, where we're really going to be able to see that we truly are the source of what's being created here. This is the time when we're going to be activating our personal lore, our personal mythos, and how that is informed by the lore and the mythos out of our roots, our ancestral bloodlines, and all those unconscious parts of ourselves that are now waking up. Okay, big energy here. Jupiter will be moving into Cancer just 2 days before that Sagittarius full moon on June 11th. Okay, it's going to be there for the long haul too, which is good because it's not necessarily in its most comfortable position being in Gemini. So do pay attention to where you have Jupiter in your chart. Do pay attention to your 4th house, the house of Cancer, any Cancerian placements you have. This is going to show you where you're going to be experiencing this expansion. This is going to show you where you're going to be moving more into the mystic, where you are going to be heading back to the source, but it's like the source of yourself. There's a lot that's going to be activated at this time, all right? But before we get there, with the purging of the priesthood, or the high priestess, you could say, and this need to rid ourselves of negative thought because of coming into a certain power that we have yet to see in this lifetime. And we know we're at a pivotal point in history, especially with Pluto in Aquarius and really hitting the point where we're definitely moving more to that light building phase of that cycle, where we are charting a new course here, it is necessary for us to root out corruption. Okay. And that doesn't just involve corruption that we're seeing in the world around us. It also starts within ourselves. It also starts with looking at where we may have downloaded some corrupt files and we might be operating out of our BS. And we do need to get a different view of that. We do need to make certain things that have been hidden from us that might be our blind spots more of a focal point of understanding by bringing them into the light of conscious awareness. So with Venus direct in Pisces, 25 degrees, and that Sabian symbol of the purging of the high priestess, we have to look at the means of expansion for that so we can know how to navigate that, which is Leo 30 degrees, an unsealed letter. And that's the Sabian symbol of things that are secret can only remain secret for so long before they're known by all. Confidence arises from being in spiritual integrity. And so this is the work that we have to do at this time. I also have a little bit of sort of like a dream time exercise for you all to help really root this and help you do that purging and move into this place of expansion. Write yourself a letter, okay? Write your future self a letter from your perspective of what your spiritual integrity is right now. Put it in an envelope. Don't seal it, okay? Don't seal it and just let it sit there until you get to the point of that Sagittarius full moon on June 11th. You might have quite a different view because there's so many secret parts of yourself that are going to be stored, that are going to awaken at this time. And with that message of the 13th, that there is something that comes through as an epiphany that acts like your star, that guides you to this fateful meeting with this king as you, the Magi. So this is you being on that hunt, that journey of transformation, just like Leon, who was chased down by Caradwin until he was tossed in the sea and transformed. You've been through a similar process. Now, by the time we arrive at the 11th with Jupiter in Cancer and this Mercury-Venus conjunction, that morning star will be hanging brightly in the sky. She hangs brightly, Libra download coming in there related to that Venusian energy. So I'll be sure to put a card here at 12:58 so I don't forget that. And you all can refer to that read because it will be playing a role in what rolls out there, right? I think it's important that we have things we can work with at this time to sort of take what seems really very intangible and give it a certain form where it can become material that we can work with, sort of like clay, something malleable that doesn't have to stay into a set form. We won't necessarily fire that until we arrive at that full moon in Sagittarius on June 11th. But I will be bringing in so much around this. Okay. I have so much coming in around all of this. So you'll have to bear with me because I don't know how I'm going to keep up with all the downloads coming in and not miss any of the pieces because there's just so much here. Okay. In tandem with all of this, we got something major going down in just about, I don't know, 10-ish days from now. We have Mars opposite Pluto. Right? So yeah, this is where we really reach a point where we recognize that we can't handle that corruption anymore. We cannot abide by false authority anymore. We will no longer tolerate certain things, and where we will have to take a stand in alignment with that spiritual integrity to overthrow those forces that are using power in a corrupt way. Okay, and that includes overthrowing aspects of ourselves that are using power in a corrupt way. But it's certainly things that we're going to see occurring on the world stage. In fact, we'll see certain very public figures ousted, we will see the rising up and that push to move into expansion out of that sort of consciousness that's just about the state of individuation, what feels right for us personally, into the more broader awareness that is Pluto in Aquarius, and how can we all sort of navigate our way through this tricky territory as we're dreaming a new way into being that we've never even experienced before. So there's a lot that we're working with here. Now, when all of this came in for me, I instantly was drawn to the mythos, the lore around Seal Woman or the Selkie. Selkie are part of fairy lore, and the Selkie are seals that can transform into human form where they can come onto land. But there's only certain times, okay? There's only certain times that they can do this. And this is how I arrived at the 13th imagery and the association with the Scorpio full moon. There are direct correlations between the Selkies and the 13th, or that epiphany date, okay? And that's traced throughout all the lore and mythos connected with the Selkie and in the roots. But it really made me think of the times when the Selkie can shed their pelt and they can come onto shore and they can experience a different kind of life than the life they're familiar with in the sea. And that's on full moons, or that's at midsummer's time, okay? So the next full moon that we have coming in is in Scorpio, all right? And by that time, we already are in that territory with Mars opposite Pluto, right? So this is when we're really going through the thick of that transformational process. And there's something here where we're going to see where that opposition really lies. Where does that corruption lie? And what does it mean to give away one's power as well? And where is the corruption within us that allows us to give away our power in such a way? So to really understand how the Selkie are coming through and communicating, we have to look at sort of the lore of the Selkie. The Selkie are shapeshifters, okay? So they really do carry that medicine of transfiguration. They take on human form, but they can only take on human form at certain times. And much of the mythos associated with the Selkies are related to these stories where power is stolen or it's lost through carelessness. In one story, there's a group of Selkies dancing on a full moon by the shore, and there is a man who is spying on them, concealed, and he's particularly enamored with one of these Selkies. Selkies are known to be quite beautiful, quite attractive when they're able to manifest in human form. And so he was very drawn to this particular Selkie's beauty. And when all of this gathering was done with their festivities for the night, and the Selkies were putting back on their pelts to re-enter into their home, into the sea again, quickly before the one that this man was so enamored by could put on her pelt, the man reached forward and stole her skin from her. And because of this, she became bound to him. She became bound to mortal life. And she was married to him, and she bore him 7 children. And it wasn't until one of her children, her son, just, doing what little boys do, playing around the house, came to discover her pelt and brought it to her and said, "What's this?" Did she gain access to her freedom? And ultimately, the call of the sea was too strong for her. And so she did return there. Whereas the man spent the rest of his life walking up and down the shore searching for her. And that's part of the mythos that is attached to the Selkie. It's themes of love and loss and longing and the call to return to the sea or call to return to the source. Now, there's also masculine Selkies, and they are known to draw women in, but eventually, they're only around for a while. Those masculine Selkies are sort of like the Knight of Wands kind of energy, they like the moment. They like to indulge in the moment, but eventually they're going to go back to the sea. And it's the same kind of scenario where the woman mortal left behind always longs to reunite with that masculine Selkie. And there's a way that she can do that with a particular charm. She can offer up 7 of her tears to the sea, and she will be reunited with her Selkie man. And it is said that women who are lost at sea are often lost because they were reunited with their Selkie lovers. So we're looking at themes here of something our heart, our soul longs for. It's something that is our soul's very essence, and it's something we want to return to, and yet we don't know how to do that, or it's something intangible that we don't quite know how to grasp. It's like we can't quite put our finger on it yet, but there's going to be all kinds of communication coming in through these sort of otherworldly encounters where the lines between reality and surreality are a little bit blurred. And we're not quite sure. Am I awake? Am I dreaming? Is that just my imagination? And yet, imagination is the key for expansion at this time. And there is a very important moment we'll experience with that Scorpio full moon, I believe, where we are going to be looking at sort of like the rougher edge of that scenario, which makes me think about the next story that is often told about the Selkie that I believe is relating to that epiphany that comes in the day after that full moon in Scorpio on the 12th. On the 13th, there's going to be awareness of this. And that story is about a hunter, a seal hunter, who was down at the shore and saw the biggest seal he'd ever seen. And so he took his best knife and he stabbed it into the seal, and the seal cried out in pain and then went into the sea. So he lost his catch, and along with it, his best knife, which really burned him because he was very attached to that knife. And he went home that night and heard a knock on his door, and there was a man there to greet him who said that he has been requested by the king, that the king wanted to see this man. And this hunter was thinking, oh, okay, there must be like some kind of, reward on offer for me because the king had heard about this hunter and called for him. And so he went with this man who had come in proxy of the king and rode with him on his horse. And when they got to the cliffside by the sea, the horse jumped off of the cliff and went into the sea and took this man to a portal that was under the sea. And there were all of the Selkies gathered. And laying there was the very Selkie that he had stabbed with his knife, and the knife was still in it. And the man who had fetched this hunter took the knife from the Selkie and put it in his hand and was like, this belongs to you. And suddenly there was like a sense of being caught, being caught red-handed there. That really made the hunter feel like he was put on the spot. And there was this sort of deal made that this hunter had to heal this king. In fact, he had stabbed the Selkie king. And in order to remedy that, only the hunter could heal his wound by like laying on of hands. And so the hunter didn't know if this would even be possible, but he knew if he wanted to be returned to land and not stay there, a prisoner of the Selkie, it's sort of like a tables turning moment. He had to figure out a way to do this. So he just kind of went on blind faith, and he put his hands on the wound and he brought it back together and it was healed. And so they gave him back his knife and they agreed to return him to shore only if he promised never to inflict that kind of pain upon the Selkie again. So I think there's something that's going to be seen about a wound. And this really makes me think of the whole Aries and Chiron energy, the wound of the self. There's something here that is understood about a wound, or perhaps the way one has wounded others, that really comes to a place of awareness on the 13th of May after that full moon in Scorpio. And there's a decision made at that time to never be wounded or to wound like that again. And in fact, perhaps understanding a little bit of the mirroring of that situation, or an awareness around how a certain relationship where one lost their power, or where one felt like they were really wounded by another, was actually there to help us heal something very deep within ourselves, so we could have the ability to rise up into our power and experience the expansion that comes with that Sagittarius full moon and the return to Jupiter in Cancer, where it's exalted. Because when we're looking at that energy of Jupiter in Cancer, it's like the rebirth of the goddess, which makes me think of the rebirth of Venus, all right? And of course, I see that imagery, when I think of that, the rebirth of Venus, I think of, it's like a revisioning of Venus, a revisioning of what does love, what does beauty mean to you? And can you find love and beauty in even what's been broken? And is there a way to take the broken and to bring it together in a new way where it becomes a thing of beauty? And for many of you, this will rise up through you, through Allen. There's something that you bring through. There's something that is birthed through you at that time that is a thing of beauty that rises up out of what were once the most broken parts of you. Wow. And that ain't no joke. Look at this. Padiarco, metamorphosis, coming in at 2811. See, we're definitely in this period right now as we're waiting to arrive at the new moon in Taurus that will come in, interestingly enough, right around that same time of the Mars-Pluto opposition. Okay, this is when we're really looking at who are we? What do we value? Do we understand our worth? Do we understand the way that we have a certain ability to wield our power that can actually respect who we know we are at the very core of our being, respect the essence of our life's purpose and what we're here to do? Or do we lose that? Do we lose that? Do we lose that to bad blood? Do we spoil the birth that is on offer here? There's something that's being transformed. There is a rising up out of the shadow. There is a conscious awareness of the masks that have been worn. And there's an awareness of what needs to be transformed. This has us stepping into that place of spiritual integrity. This is done through actually taking some kind of action. So I do believe that this is when that star comes into view. The star comes into view. And is it to greet a particular king? It could be greeting the king within oneself, the part of oneself that's being born anew, or the queen that's being born anew. But this leads to some kind of authenticity. It also brings a refining of what's being spoken into existence, because there's the recognition with this newfound awareness, the power the one holds. It's a power you've never held before because you haven't been conscious of it. Okay, so let's get some more details here. Bottom of the deck, Weaver. See, this is the judgment. We're currently in this process. We are the dream weavers. And we are also in the process of shedding certain armor that actually acts as more of a hindrance than it does make us impenetrable. In fact, the impenetrability of having that strength and that awareness that safeguards us from anything that could create inclusions where we have this refined clarity that comes rising up out of certain testing, a testing of fire, something that tests our metal, and it gives us a certain clarity of vision as we move forward. It must come through a certain level of vulnerability, through direct contemplation. It's wanting to come through as direct contemplation and confrontation of the corrupt parts of ourselves, things that we've taken on that are not in alignment with our spiritual integrity here. Those could be things that we have taken on through sort of like false idols, false authority figures. And once we realize this, we recognize that, oh, wait a minute, I have the ability to sort of expand my imagination of what's possible here. I have the ability to create my own lore, to spin my own lore, my own mythos. I can enter that place of revisioning a future, revisioning myself as well, and the role I am to play here. So this is definitely heading into sort of that more creative flow that we're entering into here, weaving a new way into being. There is some judgment that is going to be called here, and it does come in with that Plutonian energy, and it has you sort of striking out in a brand new direction. I feel. What came out here? What do we got? Yes, look at that. Wow. Oh my goodness, this is powerful. Look at this. So we have number 22, transfiguration. All right. So yes, something is seen here that wasn't seen before. There is an awareness of where there's been the corruption and what needs to come down here. And there's a willingness to transform it at that time. And I love how it's coming through with the snake medicine, which really is indicative of the Scorpio energy in this transfiguration process. Look, it's coming in there with Mars and Pluto. So this is talking about that conjunction. And I really feel like this process kicks off with that Taurus new moon, but it won't culminate until we arrive at that full moon, all right? The full moon in Scorpio. And then by the day after, we're building on a new foundation there, a foundation that has us really recognizing the power we hold and wanting to use it with a sense of spiritual integrity. And it's all in relation to this breakthrough moment that we have here. Got Libra energy on the scene with the Raven, okay, which kicked off this cycle, okay, the full moon in Libra. So we know that these are mirror moons for each other. The April 12th full moon we had in Libra is mirroring what is going down. It's like the opposite sort of reflection that we're seeing there. We have to remember the love and war with Venusian energy, okay? So it's sort of like right now we're entering this sort of dreamy time where it is about expanding our imagination of what's possible. And that is about grokking more of the love and the beauty that we have access to through the realms of inspiration, through activation of the muse. It is about doing more of the journeying, more of the visioning, and having some really kind of, what some would call supernatural encounters, but they're not really supernatural. It's just an openness to see through a different lens of perception, you could say, that more of us have direct access to at this time. And without having to head into those meditative states, it's just sort of like we got like a bit of a foot in each world at this time. And this is going to help us arrive at a certain truth, really unexpectedly, I feel, okay? By the time we hit that Scorpio full moon, our magic is activated here. There's some transformational process we're completing that finally dispels some falsehood, something that's corrupt. It's finally purged from the priesthood, okay? All things are made new. A priestess, a priest makes all things sound. This is the point of transfiguration where what is corrupt has been cleared with that Scorpio full moon. It brings us into a certain level of empowerment. With the 22 energy here, it puts us on alignment with our path of purpose here. And this is our path that has us rising into power in a balanced way, connected with the Emperor energy. Okay, big breakthrough moment where the blind spot that couldn't be seen before is now revealed, right? It's now revealed. It's now seen. At that time, I believe Venus is going to be in Gemini at the time of the full moon in Sagittarius. So, there was that whole communication link, right? Right now, Jupiter in Gemini. So see, this is really about sort of looking very closely at the way that all of the sort of symbols are speaking to you in your life at this time, because they're all helping you get back to the source, like get back to your truest essence here. Communication is coming through in a different way. It's what we've been talking about for a while here on the channel. We're not necessarily communicating so much through words, but we're communicating through archetypal symbolism here. And there's so much that's coming through this that is going to inform this breakthrough moment where we have this awakening that finally allows us to have that blind spot lit up. Then all of a sudden we understand, okay, I have my key. I have my key. I can be free. It's sort of like you can get lost on the path for a while. You can go off track and sort of head through that valley of shadow because there's certain things that you need to integrate along the way. But eventually, okay, the source will call you home. You'll feel that longing. You'll feel that call to return to the sea. And you will walk along the shore searching for it until you see it coming. And I really feel that's really going to arrive at the time that the morning star is visible, which will be occurring right around that time that we do have Jupiter heading into Cancer, and its place called home. Cancer energy is all about a sense of home, a sense of origin, a sense of belonging. It's also about the mother. And so this is a good place for Jupiter to be, much more comfortable place for it to be than in Gemini. So do pay attention to where you have all those placements in your chart. It's really going to help you understand what parts of you are being exalted at this time. What parts of you are getting called back home? Where is your place of belonging? What is your origin story? And what is the key to connecting to it? You really have to understand that when we're looking at the astrological chart, the natal chart, when you hear that saying, as above, so below, remember we all came from the stars, right? And now we're here, like the Vitruvian man, you know, in these earth suits, in this corporeal shell, having this human experience. But there's still that aspect of divinity within us. There still is the star sort of brought down, the hope of the star brought down to earth through us. And when you're looking at your natal chart, it's like looking at the cosmos only rooted in material reality as it's expressed uniquely through you. So start looking at your natal chart in a new sort of way. This also is going to provide a big breakthrough moment for you. And it's interesting to me because the last card that came out here is Lion's Mane. And that makes me think of that means of expansion for Venus in Pisces at 25 degrees with Leo 30 degrees in that unsealed letter. This is when we really do see that star that we're following. We're seeing where the hope is. We're seeing where we're meant to go at this time. But it's something that's like, it's seeing it in the reflection of you. I feel like there's areas of this whole transit that will be lit up in your natal chart that are really going to show you where your star is on the rise, where you're meant to step into some kind of leadership position. And I do feel like this is sort of like the secret part of us that can only remain secret for so long. You can deny aspects of yourself, okay, that are meant to take the lead. You can deny aspects of yourself where you hold power. But when you are meant to step into really holding that power and taking the lead, because it's something that is your soul's blueprint, eventually you're going to experience the call to rise. And you're going to have to let that be evident. So this is like a call to power here, to step out of your blind spot, to be in recognition of the power you're holding, where you are meant to take the lead. This is something that comes to your awareness very surprisingly here, with that sort of like Pluto energy merged with Uranus. It's something that is a breakthrough moment. It's something that surprises you. It's something you've never seen about yourself before, and yet it returns you right back to the source of yourself and why you're here. And there's a little bit of a Lilith kind of energy connected to this, and that it's an aspect of you that's been exiled, and now it's wanting to be brought back home. Do you see? And once you realize that, that's when you take it from this place of being exiled or being in the shadow, and you bring it up into your conscious awareness, and it becomes the exalted pathway for you. And that's when you're really in your element. And you can move into that expansion as it's coming in for you when we have that energy of Jupiter in Cancer, right? It's the balancing point of what got kicked off with that Libra full moon and this process of initiation. So in some way, you're being asked to step into your leadership here. And what that requires with the challenge of Mars opposition Pluto, with Pluto in Aquarius, is that you have to sort of dismantle the false authorities in your life. You have to rebel against this false authority. There's something that needs to be overthrown here so the transformation can take place and you can step into the empowerment of your true soul's essence. But there's a lot that needs to be understood, sort of like through a creative lens in relation to this. Okay, let's go ahead and do a kind of a deck here and just see what we got. Skull cap, stillness. See, this is the space we're moving through that right now as we're leading up to that Scorpio full moon. Even once we have the new moon come in Taurus, it still is a time of sensing and feeling things out. it still is a time when things have not taken their tangible form yet, but it is something that is going to start to crack the facade. There's some false identity, 44 on the clock, that we are going to see through here. And this is where the growth comes. This is where the growth comes. So really look at that Taurus new moon that will come in on the 27th at the same time that we have this opposition, where we recognize where our sense of individuation and how we see ourselves has been distorted by outside projections of who we're told we should be, all right? Or where we've been put in a certain box by authority figures in our lives, or where we've adopted a certain view or ideology that was put on us by outside authorities. And now we're recognizing that it is not in harmony. It is not in alignment with the truth of our true soul's essence. And so there's a throwing off of this. But before this happens with the full moon, this energy is all taking place in that sort of slippery kind of realm where it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And so there's a need as we're moving through this territory to also be aware of the shadowy aspects of Neptune, which are obsession, which are illusion, which are the deception of that glamour where we can't see the forest for the trees. And so it's not a time necessarily to be outwardly assertive in taking action. It's more like the assertion takes place within ourselves first, in just having the willingness to go to those places within ourselves where we can kind of challenge the illusions, all right? Where we're willing to sort of sift through the smoke and mirrors, where we're able to separate what's mirage from true sources of sustenance, of nourishment here. And it's happening on more of a sensory level, okay? We're really just feeling the impressions. And Scorpio is the descendant sign of Taurus, okay? So these energies activated, but it is meant to bring us into a state of balance. And yet it's tricky territory, okay? Because it is that energy is coming in with the number 11 here, 47 breaks down to 11. It is coming in with that signature of justice, okay? But it is the indication, right? We have to remember that the high priestess in the tarot is all of the water signs, okay? So we don't get to the exaltation where we've really rooted out the corruption until we arrive at the time when we got that Mercury conjunct Venus, and we got the full moon in Sagittarius on the 11th of June, and Jupiter is in Cancer, okay? That will be that balancing point. Prior to that, though, we're still in this place of purging the priesthood or the high priestess. We're rooting out the sources of negative thought within ourselves. We're sorting out, where did we get this sort of dismal view of the future? And certainly one can say, oh, well, look all around us. Like, there's evidence for having a dismal view. But see, that's negating your role as a leader. As above, so below. The cosmic design is encoded in you. You can access it through your chart. It will show you where you're meant to take a leadership role. And that may require you to look at aspects of yourself you've been too scared to look at, or where you've been afraid to take that leadership role. So again, 4th house of Cancer, Cancerian placements, Jupiter placements, Venus placements. Where you got Taurus, where do you got Libra? That Taurus 2nd house, the Libra 7th house. And with Mars and Pluto on the scene, those placements too. This is when you really need to understand the way that you actually have more ability to work with this material than just sort of being at the whim of like these astrological forecasts. It's not about necessarily, reading your horoscope to know the future. No, you're the one who awakens that future, activates it, takes a leadership role with it by understanding yourself, your soul's map that is your natal chart, okay? So please, if you've never tapped into that, and if you've never looked at astrology through that lens, now is the time to really understand it as above, so below, so within, the cosmic design within yourself, so without. It's what you cast into the world around you. This coming in very strongly here. What do we got on the other side here? Sage. It brings a great blessing here. And it comes in. You'll have this epiphany. You'll have this epiphany when you arrive at that Jupiter full moon in Sagittarius, okay? That's what we'll be working. That's what we'll be working towards with the next new moon cycle that will open up, that leads us up to that full moon in Sagittarius, okay? So that comes in with the 6 energy. So it's like a new vision being brought into being. It also brings a choice and a determination. A determination. Are you going to return to the source, or are you going to be landlocked? That's what it's really coming to. Because when you look at the energy of the Selkie want to return to the source. They will always want to return to their source. But they can become bound. They can become bound, imprisoned through carelessness, through abandoning the skin they're in, or even worse, allowing another to possess that, allowing another to sort of define our reality with the power we hand over to them. Some blessing will come in here, though, during that cycle, the new moon cycle that kicks off leading up to the full moon in Sagittarius. Okay. So I believe, that will be the Gemini. The Gemini new moon will kick off that cycle. And see, we'll already have Venus hanging out there. You know what I'm saying? So 6 is also a number of Venus. So Venus really in the thick of that too. There's some blessing that comes in here. It is that pearl, it is that pearl of wisdom. You see that image of the birth of Venus, and she's standing in that shell, and it's like that's the pearl there. That's the pearl you're gaining. It's through the refinement of an aspect of yourself. You're recognizing a treasure within yourself that allows you to take lead in your life in a way you never have before. It's a really beautiful energy, but do look for these sort of interesting, like, dates with destiny, or is it a date with fate? And there is a need to sort of really sift through those polarities within oneself to understand where the source of corruption is coming from, so you can actually see clearly without inclusions, okay? Without inclusion. So this is a big refinement process that's happening here. I do want to do a round with the, maybe I'll leave these out here. I do like these cards and sort of the imagery that's coming out here. Maybe I will incorporate this in some way in the cover photo, or take a shot of it for you all, so you can sort of refer back to it and sort of see the way that this is playing out. It's interesting too, just leading up to that point of stepping into leadership. It's like a retro kind of motion here, It's like this retrograde motion. It's like a back to the future sort of moment. There's something that's understood in hindsight, right? But you're actually getting the insight into it now. It's just not through the usual means. And that's going to be the challenge too, because when I think of that purging of the priesthood or the high priestess, I don't just think about how thoughts are things and they carry the weight of responsibility and how it's in our charge to really be mindful of our thoughts, be mindful of the things that we're speaking into existence, be mindful of where do those thoughts come from? Where did I get that idea? Is that truly something that is fueled by my own inspiration? Or is that something that's been corrupted by outside input? But there's also the piece that comes in there that's very much about, can you trust your intuition? You know, can you trust your intuition? Can you trust what you've learned during your time of scrying into the mystery, navigating your way through the dark, doing that deep dive into the mysteries of the 8th house to gain the medicines that are there, to be able to go through that process of transfiguration, which is a process that the house of Scorpio rules over. Do you have the ability to trust in that? And that is something that can be a source of corruption as well, when we've come to doubt our own intuitive knowing. Right? So there's something really big about self-trust here coming in. And I feel that's of great significance with that cycle that gets kicked off with the Taurus new moon on the 27th, right? As we enter that time of this, like, you know, showdown, you know, kind of energy with the Mars opposite Pluto, okay? It's when we're going to experience that push-pull dynamic where we're recognizing ways that we break from what is sort of the collective consciousness template at this point. But it's so a new sort of consciousness can rise up out of that. It's like, it gives me the vibes of that. Like something needs to be shed here. And it is this like sort of polarized consciousness that creates those imbalanced power dynamics. There will be a crack in that facade. So welcome this moment when it comes, because it's actually paving the way for the future of all of us to weave a new way into being. But those parts of you that have been silenced, those parts of you that have been cast out, those parts of you that are meant to take the lead, that awareness around what your soul's purpose is, that you sense there's something you're here to do, but you haven't been able to quite grasp it, you will be acutely aware of it. There's something that really just like, it's a moment of breakthrough that comes in, and suddenly you have awareness here. I also feel that when you have awareness of this, it also gives you a certain power. You have these answers, right? But it gives you a certain power. And with that comes the mindfulness of that story of the hunter who lost his best knife. It's like, okay, you're going to have your best knife here. Now, are you going to use it to activate this truth and step into that leadership position in an empowered way? Or are you going to use it in a distorted way? Are you going to use that power to cause harm to others, to wound others? And there's an agreement that's made here that you cannot use this to harm others, or else that is the corruption of the high priestess. And in essence, that's failing the initiation. That's how we become bound. That's how we become bound by our own desires. When our desires become obsession, when our desires become distorted, and they end up becoming the very thing that is our trapping, right? This is how it's coming through. I wanted to bring out the angels and imps though, and I'm going to do that right now. And the reason why I wanted to bring out the angels and imps is because another thing I learned about the Selkies is that there are some people that view the Selkies as fallen angels. And I found that quite fascinating. Okay, so yeah, we're looking at fallen, exalted aspects. We're looking at perhaps fallen aspects within ourselves that we're rising up to exaltation. I think of the fallen angel piece, and it does make me think of like the whole mythos around Lilith and how she had to go through a process of transformation to arrive to her exalted form, which is going through that sort of rebirth, you know, coming out of the shadow, coming out of being exiled and rising up as Inanna, Queen of the Heavens. And I do feel like we're mirroring that process. All of us are mirroring that process where we are heading into the exaltation phase, but it's a little dicey. It's a little tricky getting there because we're dealing with things that are not quite rooted in our material reality yet. They're in a state of flux. They're in a state of transfiguration. And the information we're getting, it's coming through the intangible. It's coming through our dreams. It's coming through in times when we're journeying. It's coming when we're having moments of visionary experience, maybe when we're connecting with the elements. It's the airway, okay? It's what's being drawn down and rooted through us. So yeah, look at that. There is a way forward here with the Three of Wands, but it's not something we're experiencing necessarily in the outside world. It's something that we're becoming aware of within ourselves through those kind of visionary experiences that are coming in here. We're constructing the universe and we're being given help right now with great works. Like there's something that could seem quite impossible, like 6 impossible things before breakfast that becomes absolutely impossible. Something that becomes absolutely, see, that's interesting. That's not accidental. That slip is not accidental. It never is, okay? There's something right now, okay, that you're sure it's impossible. You're sure it's impossible. And maybe even after it becomes illuminated to you, you'll kind of like, you'll try to push it aside. You'll have reasons for saying, no, that's just my imagination. There's no way that could be. It could even be just an intuition you have. And you're going to shoot it down. You will. You'll be more prone to shoot it down. But there's something here that it seems impossible, but it will become possible. In order for it to become possible, though, and you really to step into that empowerment, you're going to have to trust this vision. You're going to have to trust what's coming through as guidance to you through your dreams, through your visions, through otherworldly encounters, these unusual encounters you're having. And depending on how willing you are to sort of step into that Neptunian terrain will determine how easy or difficult of a process this is for you. If you're very set and stubborn in your ways, if you have a very like rigid way of seeing things, or you're very fixed in your beliefs, you're going to find this a lot more challenging to embrace. It will shake you up a lot more. But regardless, some disruption will come that will make it clear that transformation is here. There will be a breakthrough moment with the Scorpio full moon that cracks the facade. It brings an epiphany. The next day has you moving forward very differently here, okay? Moving out of the crossroads and stepping into the blessing that is to come through the activation of your soul's directive. Or we always have a choice. Or you can be bound. You can be bound. There's protection here from adversaries in really trusting what's received through walking the path of the air, the vulture's path. And vulture medicine, it's all about that transformation. Yeah, you're working with tricky elements here. But just because you're sort of experiencing things that you're not quite sure what I'm looking at yet, or that feel a little
Maybe they rise some caution in you because you're not quite sure what you're dealing with.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it is what you think it is. There's a way to witness without moving into action.
And I think that's really the key here, is to be able to witness, not only these experiences you're having, the connections you're having, and what's coming through these connections you share with others,
but also being able to witness your own responses,
what it's bringing up in you, witness your insights, witness your intuitions,
and to be able to just sort of like sit with all of this without being so reactive, which can be very hard with Mars opposite Pluto. Okay.
So all of this is really interesting energy coming in here. Really interesting energy. And it's hard kind of right now to bring in these downloads because I have so much like competing for attention at this time. You may find this. You may find that there's like just so much funneling through you and so much that's causing you to go exploring, maybe researching, looking for answers, diving deeper,
that it might be a little difficult for you to externalize at this time, and that's okay. And where you do feel that call to sort of have more of an internal process
and keep to yourself as you're moving through this territory, I think that's very helpful.
I like the idea of working with the unsealed letter in actuality.
And maybe you can have that being an ongoing sort of
letter you're writing to yourself as you get certain awarenesses coming in, insights, illuminations. Maybe go ahead and write them out, put them in that envelope, and have a look at it by the time you reach the Sagittarian full moon. And it might give you quite a moment of awareness that couldn't have been possible before. Okay. There's something to that. I feel really called to bring that in as sort of an exercise for us to work with here. All right, so let's see what we got here. Bottom of the deck, the Lovers, yes. So this is about really understanding that there is a way that we can use our creative power that brings us into a state of union. And when I say state of union, I mean brings in the awen, the inspiration, into a state of union with the avenue, or those masculine, feminine aspects, into a place of harmonization where we can birth creation, where we can now create the stuff that we pulled down from the ether, that we arrived at through this sort of dreamy, kind of ethereal, sort of smoke and mirrors, mirage-y, glamour kind of space we're moving through here. And there's a way that we can do that where we can feed more into the unconscious aspects of ourselves, where we can go into a place of fear or paranoia or obsession, and we can distort it. And that's what can actually cut off the beginning of what is a new potential we've never been able to access before. Then we can trick ourselves into being bound. And that's what we need to be aware of here as this communication starts to pour in through these unusual experiences we're going to be having, visionary experiences. Okay, this is stuff that happens in your day-to-day life as well, that you think, gosh, that was kind of strange. I'm gonna give you an example. Like I was walking down the street the other day, and I had an experience where a gentleman walked up to me and said hi, and I was walking with Ted, and he wanted to know about Ted and what kind of breed Ted was and all that, just having a little conversation. And then he gave me some dap, he gave me some dap, and I had a similar experience, much at the same, it was at a crossroads, okay, and I had this experience before,
a while ago, back in 2024, and it was a similar experience where different person, okay, but did the same thing. And I really equated it with like a little bit of like an encounter. That's how it came through for me. It was like a little transference here, a little power. It felt like that, a little bit of a, you know, a little inside information coming in there through that encounter. It made a connection point in my mind. Now, you could look at that as being just something like, that didn't mean anything, you know? So what? It was at the same place. You had that experience before, you know, different person, like, come on. But no, it was something about the encounter. It really took my consciousness back to that time and made me think about what was going on at that point when I had the first encounter. And so it was a bridging point between something that is there sort of in the quantum field, getting rooted in this present moment from the past, bringing it into the future. So there is this kind of linking energy going on with this too. It is a little bit of that time hopping. And really time is just a belief construct. And it's all going on simultaneously, past, present, future, when we look at it through a quantum lens here. So this is what you're actually actualizing. And that's why it can feel like a little bit of a fantasy sort of experience. And yet something very real is happening at this time. So pay attention to those experiences. And that's about you trusting it. You could relay a story just like I did to somebody else, and they'd be like, oh, you know, you're just, you know, that's just you, you know, that's just your imagination. Like there's no connection there. This is just an ordinary experience. And there are people who go through life and they look at life in that way. It's just all just mundane life, nothing to see here, folks. But I tend to prefer more the lens that Dan Millman introduced when he said there are no ordinary moments, right? No ordinary moments. And I agree with that. There are no ordinary moments. And it really is a choice of perspective. And perhaps that's the very thing, the corruption that needs to be rooted out here, is that it's just, you know, it's nothing special. It's no big deal. No, there are no ordinary moments. It all has significance. And it's entirely dependent on your perspective and what you do with it. But when you act in accord with this sort of new way of looking at the world, that there are no ordinary moments, all of a sudden you totally expand your imagination and your field of what's possible for you. It's true. And if you doubt me on that, I really encourage you, as you move through this time, maybe let that be a meditation of sorts. There are no ordinary moments. Absolutely every encounter I have in my day-to-day life, absolutely everything that goes down that gives me that feeling like, that was a little funny, or whoa, that's unusual, or I've never seen that before. It just gives you that sort of like resonance inside. Why don't you just play with that a little bit? Okay, just try it on for size. Just play with it and say, that was not an ordinary moment. There's something there for me. There's something there for me. And when you invite in that sense of curiosity, that changes everything. Curiosity. It's funny, it makes me think of the download that came in last night. Okay, well, curiosity may have killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. You see what I'm saying? And when we think of cat in terms of the medicine relating to secrets, suddenly, you know, it's like, well, suddenly, yeah, there you go. You got the means of expansion through Leo 30 degrees. Something that was once secret is no longer secret, but then it becomes known by all. How does it become known by all? Because you're not hiding it anymore. You get the secret, you get the secret sauce, you get the insight, you get that little bit of magic that you're plucking out of the quantum field and you're actualizing through you. And then suddenly it is known by all because you're embodying it. So there's like these secret parts of you coming to life right now. But sometimes you have to invite them forward through that sense of playfulness and imagination and being willing to look at life in that way, that no, it's not just another day or just another encounter or just another experience. There are no ordinary moments. It's all magic, okay? It's all magic. And yet, remember to keep both feet on the ground, because the high priestess makes all things sound, okay? Don't wander off into the alfalfa where you get lost. And that is the empowerment, all right? That's how you really do take up that position of the emperor or the empress, to be able to be seated in that power. If you can have these flights of fancy, but you don't know how to bring them back down to earth and really root it in material reality, well, then the potential is squandered. It's lost. Okay. So this is also about, remember, chop wood, carry water, tend to the practicalities as well. We learned that during our time of moving with the energy of Pluto in Capricorn that we got through, okay? There's that energy of being able to have mutability, even within, what at times can seem very challenging, right? Very challenging, very mean and heavy, very structured, there is a way to also be aware that in order to find the flow that gets us where we need to go, it is necessary to also have like the foundation laid. Then, the mean and heavy doesn't have to really take us for such a ride. We can be really grounded as we're working with this energy. But it is about rooting those loftier visions in material reality. All right, let's go ahead and get one shuffle here. Let's get any further details about this, and then we're going to wrap this up for tonight. It's flipped up here. 5 of Wands. Yes. See, there may be conflict that we're navigating. There may be situations that we're navigating where we're bumping up against, others' ambitions, our own ambitions, desires, how those are at odds, and each one sort of wanting to be the victor in that situation. But there's something here where, as long as you are seeking the truth, and when I say the truth, I don't necessarily mean another's truth. I'm talking about the truth within your soul, that's encoded within your soul, the truth of your purpose, what you are here to take leadership of. You will not use this power in a distorted way, and you will hit your mark. And there will be protection. There will be protection for you along the way. And be mindful. Be mindful of what you're speaking over your life too, because we got God listening here in concealment. And see, the way that's coming through for me is there's so much about this like muse energy being activated right now. It's like the muse is coming down to earth in the form of that exaltation that comes in with that Mercury-Venus conjunction at the time of Jupiter entering Cancer, where it is very much like the muse walking on earth. I mean, it's perfect to lead the charge into that dawning of the age of Aquarius, and where we really start to move into that greater expansion. Beautiful energy here. Okay. But God listening in concealment, it's sort of like, yeah, be aware. Be aware of the things you're saying here. Because the creator within you, the muse within you, the divinity within you is listening. It's already in you. It's already in you. You got a direct line. There is no separation. It's all interconnected here, okay? So yes, that active fading force is at the forefront right now. And so you really want to be mindful of what you're speaking into existence here. There's going to be so many blurring of lines between what's sort of like in your head and what you're seeing in your outer reality. where you are going to have these moments, much like I had with Ted, where a tarot reading, a tarot card specifically, came to life in material reality. That wasn't imagination, that was actualization. That's what it's about. Okay? That's what it's about. It's to understand that creative force is already with you. It's being embodied right now. And so really pay attention to that aspect as well with what you're seeing manifest in your reality, because it's giving you a clue as far as how you're using your creative power. Is it rooted in corruption, or are you very conscious of the material you're working with? And so it's moving into its exaltation. All right, let me go ahead and do a cut of the deck here just to cap this off. Oop. We had a couple cards here. They're like, no, you need to take both of these here. Yes. See, this is what's coming to an end here. The places within us that want to promote war, that want to promote discord and conflict and drama and be at odds, and the places inside of us that are attached to the falsehoods that we've adopted here, the places inside of us that give generous responses, excuses for why things are the way they are. In other words, when we're not in a place of being in harmony with our true soul's essence, there will always be another that we're pointing the finger at. We'll always have an excuse. We'll always have generous responses for why we can't move forward, or we keep finding ourselves in a position of lack with the Five of Pentacles here. And if we hold tight to those things, then truly we're squandering our potential, and we're wasting the dawn of what wants to come through us, what's been gifted to us, what we're meant to take charge of. You know, I think of the dawn and I think of the solar energy, and I do think of that Leo energy, the secret parts of us where we really are meant to take lead because it's been put in our charge, but we're getting generous responses for why we can't do that. We also have to remember that when we're overthrowing these energies with Mars opposite Pluto, we have to be willing to take a stand. We do. What are you willing to take a stand for? What are you willing to take a stand for? But what's coming down here are the arguments, are the places of division, is the sort of polarization that keeps us at war, even within ourselves. And that's why we find ourselves at war with others. That's why we find ourselves at war with the way our reality is rolling out. Okay. So it's really understanding that point where we're both cause and effect here. Okay. And then what do we got on the other side here? Ace of Wands. Ooh. And that's when we get past that baton. That's when we actually pass the initiation of the vulture's path and we enter that rebirth cycle. And the trickster says, well done here. You've earned your Ace of Wands. Now you have the ability to really use that power wisely that's been put in your hands. We're gaining access to holy secrets here and instructions on how to use them. We've had instruction up to this point on how to use our power in such a way that we can make a weapon out of it, or we can use it to seduce, to obtain our desires through distorted means. But now we're being asked to bring those aspects of ourselves into the light so we can go through a refining process and we can wield this power wisely. What comes after this? 10 of Wands. Again, we're understanding that we are both at cause and at cure for what ails us here. And it's through us discovering these hidden secrets And this is what's going to allow us to shape shift here. I love it. Look at that Leo energy. Checkmate moment. That's that means of expansion for rooting out the corruption here. Okay. We're gaining access to secret knowledge here, secret gifts. And it's in relation to something that has kept us too much in that wounding of Aries and Chiron for far too long. And it brings this point of healing here and returns to us what we thought was stolen, but it wasn't stolen. It's just treasure we buried within ourselves. Perhaps because we were afraid of really stepping into that leadership potential. You know, there's a certain accountability that comes with stepping into that position of leadership. And that's what's really coming through here. Anything else? I don't know. I feel like I need to bring out one more thing. I think I want to get us an oracle card. It just can give us a single point of focus here. Oh, get this big deck. Okay. Just one card, please, for the way that we can best show up to receive what's on offer here, Spirit, or any directive you want to give us at this time. Okay. Just a focal point. Maintaining focus is still really important at this time. Making sure that you're focusing on where you're heading, not where you've been. Is quite essential at this time, okay? Just maintaining that point of focus, as well as entering those spaces that allow you to focus on sort of your internal process as well. So meditation is very helpful at this time. And anything that allows you to access those infinite possibilities through entering a meditative or visionary space. I mean, you can do that through drumming, you can do that through dancing, you can do that through hiking, or just simply being out in nature, or sky gazing, or just drifting off, you know, giving yourself a moment of nothingness where you can see what emerges in that space, you know, and looking at your life through the lens of there are no ordinary moments. Basis of the matter, I like it. See, number 44, visions of life beyond death. So we know that we're going to be closing up an essential process with that Scorpio full moon. That's going to allow us to retrieve this special magic we hold, this special empowerment that we're meant to activate. It gives us access to some hidden knowledge, some activation of something that was once secret, but is meant to be embodied and brought forward here. And that is what allows us to head into the rebirth phase here with number 44. It's the beginning of the manifestation point leading up to the Sagittarius full moon on June 11th. And there we go. All right. It's time to get things cooking with the cauldron of Dacta there. All right. Synergy and healing. This is what we're in the process of doing right now. There's times it's going to stir the pot. And when the pot gets stirred and you do find things coming into your field of awareness that normally would be activating for you, all right, it's time to notice what is it stirring within your waters, within your emotions, within your intuition. So this is the time to really allow that fire to come in and transform the emotions, all right? There's something that's really being lit up in the subconscious. There's something that's being lit up in our intuition. There's something that's being lit up in the way we're reacting or responding to what can be provocation or things that make us feel sort of at odds in situations, especially as we arrive at that point of the Mars-Pluto opposition, okay? So pay attention to this, but understand that even as you're bumping up against those places, the more that you can bring light to what's happening within you in terms of your emotional response and what you're gathering intuitively from that experience is going to be the waterway. It is something that brings about this synergy, this healing for you, and it even gives you that power in your hands to cook up something quite different for your future. All right, stay tuned, more to come. I just definitely wanted to drop into this energy with the Neptunian force front and center at the Aries point, that 0 degrees Aries, and the way it was meeting up with Mercury. It was wanting to be brought into expression. And pay attention to how it's wanting to be brought through in expression through you.